Hey everybody, this is Kirsten here. Welcome back to the new episode of the Balanced Vibes podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about bad weight loss advice. So some pieces of advice that people have received from either their doctors or friends or family members, or something they have received from social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, or just good marketing, pieces of advice that people have received when they have a weight loss goal. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is that you know that I am not for diets. I don't like diets. I know that they don't work, and they usually only make things worse. If somebody has a weight loss goal, they jump on a diet, they do it for a little while, then they get tired, or it wasn't sustainable, or it was just too extreme, and then they no longer stick with it. And of course, as a result, that little bit of weight that came off will now come back on. So before we dive into today's topic, I'm going to give you 13 really bad pieces of advice that people have received for weight loss. I wanted to invite you to join my Fit and Fueled Facebook group. So this is a group for women who are interested in building strength, getting stronger, building more muscle, understand the health benefits of it, and are not only really obsessed with the scale number. Just today, actually, I did a live video there where I talked about that it really isn't only about the scale. So if you're a woman who wants to look better, get fitter, feel better, have better health, and of course, if you want to lose a little bit of fat too, that's totally fine, then make sure that you join the Fit and Fuel Facebook group. And just like I said before, I don't do diets there. We don't do crazy stuff, nothing extreme. And if this is your mindset too, you want to do it in a healthy way, then please join. I would be happy to see you there. All right, so on to today's topic and how I collected this data. So basically what I did was that I asked in a Facebook group, not my Facebook group, but another Facebook group where I'm a member of, what is the worst piece of weight loss advice that you have ever received? And this question was really popular because, of course, so many women have experience with that. And most women have been on more than one diet, and many women have been on more than 10 diets. So it became a popular post. People were willing to share, and it's interesting to see what the responses were. So I'm going to go over 13 of these points, these pieces of advice that people told me about that they have received, and they are in no particular order at all. So I thought it would be interesting to see maybe there's something that you resonate with. And of course, the overall goal is to show you that diets don't work, don't do them. All right, so number one, weight loss method number one is to take laxatives. There are even a couple of brands that have been recommended to people. One of them, I believe, was called X-Lax, and I didn't know about this before. I actually asked the person who posted this, I asked, what is this? And she said, well, it's a laxative. And she was given that, or somebody recommended it to her. But of course, you probably understand that this is a really bad advice to take laxatives, because what does it actually do? In order to change your behavior around food, in order to improve your relationship with it, to get you physically active, nothing. It doesn't do anything. It just gives you a big bowel movement and will just make you feel temporarily like empty. And that's all. Will your weight go down? Yeah, probably for a second. But was it fat loss? No, it wasn't, right? Obviously it wasn't. It's a really, really bad advice to take laxatives. I hope you don't even consider this. I mean, laxatives for maybe if you have an emergency case of really terrible constipation and you need to take it, yes, I think there's a time maybe for it, but never for weight loss. It actually reminds me that there was another person who asked, should I go and just get the cleanse done, right? So the cleanse, again, same thing. It doesn't really do anything to your body fat. It doesn't change any behaviors around food. It doesn't make you exercise. It doesn't start anything sustainable for you. So is it going to feel good? Yeah, probably going to feel a little bit lighter, but it doesn't do anything to actually change your behaviors and give you sustainable results. All right, so we covered laxatives. Now, the second point, and this is really sad to read, and that was to throw up. So basically somebody said, when I was younger, I had a friend who always ate and then threw up because this is how she could eat and enjoy the food and then get rid of it. Obviously, we're talking about severe eating disorder here. If it's an ongoing thing, then it's called bulimia, obviously, so absolutely nothing to even consider. It is a mental disorder, and it's a really, really bad thing. So, from my personal experience, I never threw up, but I did have very bulimia-like behaviors after I got past my sort of borderline anorexia phase. So that was way, way back, I would say maybe 16 years ago at this point, where I was eating very, very little and got terribly skinny. And my behaviors were very much like anorexic. So I ate very little. And it's not that I didn't eat anything. It was also just the amount of exercise that I did. It just left me with very little net calories. So I probably didn't eat as little as true anorexics do, but I ate still fairly little, and I just ran so much that I burnt it all off. And so when I couldn't anymore eat so little and starve myself, then it started to look more like a binge eating behavior, where I just had a couple of times a month where I just stuffed myself with so much food that I could just not physically even move. And this is very bulimia like behavior. I never threw up though, but bulimia can actually be without throwing up part, so it still can still be considered bulimia. So this is a very, very dangerous thing. And I remember even in college, I once had a roommate who had this issue, and it was bad. So I'm hoping that this is not something you have ever tried and will never, ever, ever try. I do have a feeling that this is more like something that maybe younger women are doing. I don't know of any, 30 plus, 40, 50-year-old ladies who would do that. But I know that, in early 20s or even teens, this is something that unfortunately women do. And this is something to, never, never, ever mess with. All right. So the next thing that somebody mentioned was to do intuitive eating / listen to your body. And this is very interesting to me because I also tried that and didn't get me anywhere. And why are we so surprised if intuitive eating doesn't get us anywhere? Well, because we're already eating intuitively and we don't like the way we look and feel, then something has to change, right? So where I was when I started with macros was this intuitive eating. And for me, it was like, yeah, let's eat like ice cream, I don't know, 7 times a week, and let's skip dinner and go have froyo instead because I feel like it. This is my intuition. Also ate like a lot of snacks and treats and things like that. I never really even, fully think how would I put together a balanced meal? What does a balanced plate look like? It was just like, oh, I'm eating intuitively. So at some point, the fat loss should start happening, right? But it didn't. And when you think about it logically, how could it if you don't change anything? You're already eating intuitively and you don't like the way you are. How could it in some random moment start working then? I mean, we need a different input, right? And so a lot of times that actually means that you start tracking something. You even as simple as, write the things down that you're eating. You don't have to start tracking immediately with MyFitnessPal. You can just write the things down that you're eating and becoming more mindful of your food choices. And then you start making changes, right? Maybe you notice that I haven't had a lot of protein at all, or I, only ate 2 eggs and that was all my protein for the day. And then I ate chocolate 3 times a day. You start noticing things like that, and that will teach you something. And that will teach you that, hey, I should probably eat more protein and I should probably add more vegetables to my diet. But if you don't do that and you just trust your intuition, which tells you to get a takeout like several times a week and have dessert all the time, because that's what your intuition says, you're not going to get very far. So I'm not surprised that this person didn't get any weight loss, fat loss results when she did intuitive eating. I didn't get it either. I had to dial things down a little bit more and learn about macros and balanced plates to actually start seeing things change. All right, the next one, going to be my big favorite, is to do keto or cut out all the carbs. I've talked about it so much on this podcast, how bad I think this advice is, especially for women who are A, active, B, still have menstrual cycles. So really bad idea to cut out all the carbohydrates, really bad for your adrenals, increasing the stress response, increasing the cortisol, which eventually will have the opposite effect. It's not going to be the weight loss, fat loss. It's actually going to be gaining because your body is just now under so much stress. Really bad for a thyroid. So many women who have done keto have developed thyroid issues, hair loss, feeling cold all the time. So you may have heard people say, but carbs are not essential for you. Well, but is eating no carbs optimal for you? And I would say for active women, especially those who are still getting the periods, absolutely not optimal. I see so many period issues. I see people getting just into so much trouble when they just do it, and I don't like it at all. Some time ago, I had a client who was doing keto and didn't get her periods and was absolutely miserable. What do I do? Something's wrong, but I'm eating well, right? I'm eating the right thing. I'm following the keto diet. And we literally all we had to do was to bring the carbohydrates back. And she got her periods back, and now she's pregnant. And she told me that this is the first time in 6 years that I'm not ordering a keto cake for my kid's birthday. And I was like, oh my goodness, how far are we gone with this? We're ordering keto cakes for our kids' birthdays. Why can't you just have a normal cake for a kid's birthday? So this is how far we've gone with it. And it's just really damaging for so many women. So I absolutely do not recommend that you do keto. The next thing that people mentioned was another big favorite of mine, intermittent fasting / OMAD. So OMAD means 1 meal a day, very similar to intermittent fasting. Okay, with intermittent fasting, you could have like 2 or 3 meals maybe, but still the eating window is so small. So that's why I put them together, intermittent fasting and OMAD. So basically you are starving yourself for a good chunk of the day, maybe 16 hours. And still a lot of women think that this is what they should be doing. They're telling me, but I'm doing everything right. I'm fasting, I'm keeping the carbs low, and I don't understand why I'm not losing any body fat. Well, again, it comes down to that cortisol response again, especially when we throw in drinking coffee on an empty stomach, working out fasted. All this will increase your cortisol response, and then the fasting, it just doesn't give you the results that you want to get. Of course, temporarily at first you get a result because you were starving yourself like 16 hours of a day, and you see what I call the flat belly effect, because you just have no food in your stomach, right? But then it doesn't last. It's about 4 to 6 months when people start noticing that it really doesn't work for me. I feel brain foggy, I feel tired, I feel hungry, I have to stare at the clock. Before I can eat, it's just way too stressful for me. And besides, I've started gaining weight. So it doesn't usually work. Of course, there's some exceptions, and I'm sure there's somebody that's listening is like, but it works so well for me. Well, do what you think is best for you. But what I see is that oftentimes it does backfire. All right, the next advice that somebody had received was eat 7 small meals a day. Okay, so eat 7 small meals a day. I think the idea here is to never get hungry, so you don't maybe overeat. I think that's maybe what the thing is here. But I will say that you don't have to eat 7 meals a day. It really isn't like about like a high number of meals, and so that you keep your blood sugar super stable and never have any sensation of hunger. I think this is why the recommendation is. But I will say you can also eat 3 meals a day. I would say optimal for most women is about 3, 4, maybe 5 meals a day. If 3 works well for you and they're balanced meals and you don't feel like you need snacks in between, this is fine for most people. Now, and 5 is okay too. If you do feel like you need those couple of snacks in between, this is fine too. So I would say for most people, like 3 to 5, but to say that it has to be 7, to me, it's like, it's a little too much. Why does it have to be 7? I don't know that there's any huge benefit to it. What I don't like is when people say 1 or 2 meals a day, right? Because this is just too little to get a good amount of calories in. Most people end up under eating with just 1 or 2 meals a day, and this is just restriction, or this is just starvation. But I also don't think that it has to be as high as 7. I mean, if it works for you, I guess it's not a bad thing. It's it's not going to ruin anything. But I can say that this is a rule that 7 meals is the right answer. The next point is eat 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day plus do cardio. Okay, so if there's something that we have talked about on this podcast a lot, this is it, right? So you know that eating as low as 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day is way too low for most women. And it just takes your weight down at first really quickly, and then it stops working. Most people hit a really hard wall with this because they downregulate their metabolism to the point where the metabolism just doesn't want to burn anything anymore. It just burns what you give it. And if it's 1,000 calories, this is what it burns. And it can happen in several ways. You can set yourself a goal, I'm not going to eat more than 1,000 calories. But it can also happen when you do something like Noom, for example, where I believe it's not so strictly about calorie counting, but the foods that you eat still add up like this little. Also, for example, when I did Weight Watchers, I didn't track my calories then, but I think my net calories were somewhere there, maybe 1,200, maybe 1,400. So there are several ways to get to the same result. So the bottom line is still that if your calories are so low, no matter why they're so low, no matter what method you use, but if they're so low, it will downregulate your metabolism massively, and it's going to be very difficult to continue to lose weight. And it's also very, very hard to sustain. I don't know anybody who feels very good at 1,000 calories. I mean, maybe somebody, but I can guarantee you that they are not healthy when they do that. And now when we throw at it a bunch of cardio too, then we're going to get ourselves into more trouble, because we're telling our bodies, the signal that we're sending our bodies is that we don't need any muscle, so we can get rid of all the muscle because we're doing so much cardio. We're not feeding our body, so let's get rid of the muscle. And this is how we just may get skinnier first. The muscle comes down, the body fat comes down too. The muscle, yes, we lose that. And then at one point, like I said, we're going to hit a wall and we start gaining it all back. Gaining it all back can happen because we just start binging. We cannot keep up with this 1,000-calorie diet, or it can happen because your metabolism just starts fighting back and starts storing a little, even like a little tiny bites of whatever you give it, and just saves it and doesn't want to get rid of it at all. Now, the next point that somebody told me about was to eat fat-free foods. Again, bad idea. Just like eat no carbs, similar to that, eat no fats is a really, really bad advice as well. And, we need fat for so many functions in the body. And of course, we need it for our hormonal health. To say somebody to eat fat-free foods, I believe this is more like maybe like 90s or so. I don't hear that advice too much anymore, but maybe it's still around. And then, again, coming back to Weight Watchers days, when I did it, it was all about keeping the fat really low. And I'm not surprised that I messed up my hormones as badly as I did. So right now, with my clients, honestly, I keep the fat in a good level, and I won't, even at the peak of somebody's fat loss phase where the calories are their lowest, I don't drop the fat under 60 grams generally. And if somebody comes to me and I see they're only eating 35 grams of fat, we have a lot of work to do, because your body's not what it needs for your hormones, and you're not going to feel very well. There's so many other issues that can come from it too. So it's important to get plenty of fat with your diet and not go fat free. The next piece of advice that somebody mentioned was to use more willpower. I think this is very interesting too, as if it's all about just one thing. You either have willpower or you don't. It's like, how much do you want it, right? So we cannot always use willpower and think that, okay, I'm on 1,000-calorie diet. As long as I have solid willpower, I'll get through it. No, this is not how it works. You may have all the willpower in the world, but you cannot get against your physiology, right? Your physiology starts screaming at you one point when the calories are so low. Like I mentioned, you either start craving and binging, like, what happened to me when I mentioned earlier, I was borderline anorexic like 16 years ago, or then your body just starts fighting, and you just cannot starve yourself anymore. So using more willpower is definitely not key. Of course, willpower is needed when you have a weight loss, fat loss goal. You may have to sometimes say no to certain treats, or you may have to say no to those 3 glasses of wine that you want to have every week. You may have to use some willpower. A lot of times you do, most of the time you do. But to say that, you can do extreme stuff by just relying on willpower, this is not true. The next advice was to do Weight Watchers. So I have already touched that a little bit. To be honest, I don't know exactly how it works these days. I have shared my experience, how it was like way back 16, 17 years ago. Can't believe it's that long. But for me, it also like how you do it. I know I personally also took it to the extreme and just tried to be even better, right? So if the number of points, I believe it's the same point system now too. The number of points that were allowed for me was 21. I was like, I'm going to do it better. I'm going to get away with just 15, and I'm just going to run like crazy. So of course I made it worse myself too. So I cannot only blame the program. And at the end of the day, I was the one who did the program. So, it's always our personal responsibility too. Nobody forced us to do any of these diets. But yes, Weight Watchers apparently doesn't also work for a lot of people. So like I said, I don't know exactly how it works these days. But I don't think it has changed a whole lot. All right, now the next piece of advice, this is very interesting to me. And this is, don't exercise, it makes you hungry. All right, so terrible advice in my opinion. We're saying that something as good for us as exercise, we cannot do this because it's gonna ramp up our hunger. what does it tell you about that diet or that program? It tells you that it's just probably super low calorie, it's extreme, it's going to downregulate your metabolism, and maybe even exercise is dangerous when you're eating that low calories. So if you get this advice, like, your calories are so low right now, don't exercise because it's going to make you hungry, this is terrible. So you have to fuel your body enough for your exercise to be effective. Otherwise, it's just not going to work for you. How are you going to build muscle if you're not feeding your body? It's just not how it works. So throw this type of diet out the window that tells you that you cannot exercise. Of course, there are some cases where I have to tell people to not exercise. It's rare, but it's not because we're in a calorie deficit. It's actually the opposite. If somebody's so freaking burnt out, and this is more like, with people with amenorrhea or like who have had recently, like really, they haven't eaten almost anything at all, and their metabolism is just so burnt out. Then in some cases, if the person is really burnt out, but to be honest with you, I don't work with these people anymore. It's not really something that I enjoy, but there are cases where people, because they have been so malnourished, they just cannot exercise and they have to feed their bodies first to build up some energy, and then they can start exercising. But this is a little bit different story. Now, if you go on a diet and the diet takes your calories down so much that you are told to not exercise, now this is a terrible diet. Don't do it. The next piece of advice, and we have 2 left, is to use smaller plates. Now, okay, I find this one interesting because I understand how we can work, how we can, it's a psychological thing, right? If you take a smaller plate and you fill it up and you maybe see that I ate a whole plate full of food, it should probably psychologically then tell you that you already ate a full plate of food, you don't need any more. So I think this is what the thought process here is. But I will still think that maybe you're still not meeting your calorie needs when you do that. So let's say that your small plate gives you like 300 calories for lunch, but you're still hungry after that. You actually need 600. Still not a really good advice, right? So I would figure out what your actual calorie needs are, if you're meeting them or not. And if you don't know what your actual calorie needs are, you can get my Lean Ladies Calorie Routine and Workout Guide. It is linked to in the show notes. All right, and the last piece of advice, and I would never recommend that, is to take a weight loss pill. So this is something that, advertising, doctors, is a shortcut, right? Here's the pill, take that. You don't have to do any work. And obviously, it doesn't do anything to change your behaviors. It doesn't do anything to help you go to the gym. It doesn't do anything to put you in your power. It is in my power to change my body. It is my power to build muscle. It is in my power to change my health, improve my health. It doesn't do any of that. It's just like, hey, let's fix this real quick. And the worst thing is that it doesn't even fix anything, right? So you can take that weight loss pill. Most of the time, they do not work. They didn't teach you anything, and you're going to end up in the same place where you started. So these are pieces of advice that people received when they asked, weight loss advice, and most of them I just cannot agree with. They really don't work. What really does work is learning, right? We got to put in the work and understand what our nutrition needs are, what are our calorie needs. Are we getting enough protein? Are we getting enough fiber? Are we getting enough variety? Are we meeting our needs, especially considering our workouts? Is our health good? How is our liver doing? How are the adrenals doing? How's the thyroid doing? Can I even afford to go in a deficit right now? Do I have to build up first? How's the blood sugar? There's so many other things to consider, um, and you can get so much better. You can build the health that you want, the physique that you want, but you have to put in the work. And the first step, in my opinion, is start tracking what you're eating. Have an understanding of what you're having, how much you're having, and then start tweaking and making adjustments and improvements. And if you need any help with that, please reach out. I'm happy to help, and I'm helping a lot of women with the same thing in my Fit Up Fuel Facebook group as well. So bottom line, don't do diets. They freaking don't work. They have never worked, and they never will. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast today. I wish you a wonderful day, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.